that's something I must be just on overload as far as my naivete, because I was thinking, well, I thought this after Vietnam. Nobody's going to trust us. Nobody's going to rely on us. Look at what happened in Vietnam. We leave with our tail between our legs, and that country is still suffering from our armament from Agent Orange, but yet they're unified. And now we do the same thing with Afghanistan, and Iraq is just sitting off there. I don't even know what the status is in Iraq anymore. But I just don't understand why countries like Australia, like the UK, like any of these countries actually get on board with what we're doing, because it seems like a road to hell.
I think we should be.
Allow me to give you a suggestion.
Okay.
Canada, for instance, doesn't have to face up to this because they're actually under the umbrella. They really are. So they don't have to take principled lines on it. They can take principled positions about other things. And they do. But people like countries like Australia and New Zealand are in quite a different position. We have to look after our own defense. If we don't do so independently, we are sucked into America's wars, which is what's happened to us, but not to New Zealanders because they're refused. And it is in our interest. This is the only, seems to me, the only recourse that Australia has now is to make it clear to the United States that if there was to be a war against China over whatever, Australia would not join a US-led coalition, because the US always wants a coalition, right? It's part of the justification for Congress, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if Australia had the guts to say, hell no, we won't go, going back to your Vietnam days, we are not interested in joining a coalition to fight in a war that we would lose, and a war that could become a nuclear war. If we said that, there would be disbelief in Australia, but there would be shock horror in Washington. Now, why, you say, don't countries like mine do that, what I've just recommended? I'll tell you why. Because they know from experience, and we know from 1975, what happened here, that a government that does that to the United States can find itself destabilized, out of government, and sometimes its leaders can find themselves dead.
Yeah, ask Salvador Allende.
Indeed.
So, David, do you want to weigh in on that?
Well, I think the key, I agree 100% with what Alison has just said. I think the key here is not to be thinking about countries and, why would countries do this and what does China feel, but to be thinking of governments, which have almost nothing in common with the people who live in the countries that we call countries, and which are increasingly corrupt all over the world, corrupted internally and corrupted by foreign influence, including the US government influence. I mean, we at WorldBeyondWar.org, we have a petition that says, don't get yanked into a war on China, that we're getting thousands and thousands of signatures from around the world and taking to governments around the world and saying, don't do exactly what Alison just recommended. Say, we will not be part of your gang in a war on China or in threatening a war on China. And people are signing it. People are signing it in Australia, but they aren't the Australian government, which does not represent the Australian people any better than the US government represents the US people. It just, I wouldn't look for logic or morality or anthropomorphize these governments. I mean, they're made up of people, but their institutions and their interests are extremely corrupt and perverted. You just can't expect them to behave sensibly. You have to demand and pressure them to behave sensibly.